Welcome everyone to the Watch List, Australia's newest investor webinar series for ASX listed companies to talk directly to real investors and potentially be added to their watch list. For companies, as we know, getting on your watch list is a big deal. It means they're being watched and, more importantly, have a chance for you to invest in them and follow their journey. We've regularly asked who is on your watch list and who you want to hear present. And we also do our own research to find companies that we think may wish to be on your watch list, or companies we think you should consider putting on your watch list. Well, today we've done our research and found a cracking company for you to hear from. Kingsland Minerals, ASX code KNG. Shortly, I'll introduce Kingsland MD Richard Maddox, who will run through a company presentation and then be on hand to answer any questions you may have. So while Richard is presenting, make sure you're thinking up the questions you want answered. Now's your chance, and submit them using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Okay, let's get started. As I welcome Richard, I'd like to give you a brief overview of the company. Kingsland Minerals is an exploration company with assets in the Northern Territory and Western Australia. Kingsland's focus is exploring the Ley graphite project in the Northern Territory. The company is confident that Ley has immense potential, as shown by the substantial exploration target that has been released to the ASX. I'd now like to introduce Richard, who will run through a presentation. And remember, get those questions ready. Richard, over to you.
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks very much for that. And it's good to be here talking to people. I thought it was a good time to update the market on what we've been doing. We've had a couple of announcements out, and we've released our quarterly as well this morning. So it's just an opportune time to just to let people know what we're doing. We've been drilling here for a few months, so it's probably a nice time to look at what we've done in the previous 6 months, and also what we will be doing in the next 6 months. So I'll just flick through a couple of slides here. The next slide is just the disclaimer here, which you can all read at your leisure. This slide here is just a bit of a summary of what we're on about here. We think we've got a large graphite project in the Northern Territory, about 2.5 hours drive south of Darwin. We've got scale. You can see our exploration target there, which we released in March this year, is quite large, 250 million tonnes between 8 and 11. Like I said, our location, we're 2.5 hours drive south of Darwin in the Northern Territory in Australia. So we like to see ourselves as a tier 1 project in a tier 1 location. Now, on the next slide, you can see our location plan there. Sorry, I'm out of order there. That's all right. Again, you can see a summary of what we're on about here as well. We own 100% project there at the Leyland project in the Northern Territory. We've got 20 kilometres of strike length on a graphitic schist, and that provides us with that scale. The test work that we've done indicates we've got some good size flake graphite, up to 160 microns, which is ideal for the battery anode end product, which we'll be endeavouring to do some more test work on later next year. The graphite market obviously is forecast to go into deficit based on demand for electric vehicles. Demand for electric vehicles is increasing. Jurisdictions around the world now are starting rules about phasing out internal combustion engines and replacing them with electric vehicles. So we see, and most other market analysts also see the demand for graphite typically increasing over the next 8, and obviously with that will come a price increase too. Another important factor which has also come into play very recently is China has introduced export controls for graphite products from December the 1st this year. Those products include flake graphite and also spherical graphite, which is what you put into your car battery. So that's an interesting development that China's obviously looking at the market and how it's progressing, and they've introduced those export controls. A snapshot there about our corporate profile. Our market cap of about $14 million based on a share price of 23 cents. We've got $3.7 million cash, an EV of 10.3. So that's a fairly moderate market capitalisation based on what we've got. And there's some strong news flow coming forward with more assay results, metallurgical test work, and our mineral resource coming forward. So just on the next slide there, just to go back to our location there, you can see where we are. We're in the Pine Creek district. Pine Creek's had a long history of gold mining, over 130 or 40 years. We're about 30 or 40 kilometres from Pine Creek. It's a 2.5 hour drive down from Darwin on sealed roads. The next slide there will show you the infrastructure in place. You can see there that We're close to the main north-south corridor into Darwin there. So we've got sealed highways, high voltage power lines, gas pipelines, a railway line, service centre at Pine Creek, and also Catherine about now. So it's a fantastic location up here to do business, and it's in a great location as far as infrastructure and service providers as well. Now, moving on now, just for a look at the geology on the next slide there. You can see there on that picture on the right is the graphitic schist, which is a carbonaceous shale with carbon in the sedimentary rocks that up against that pink granite, and that's cooked up the carbon into graphite. So we've got a 20-kilometre strike length on our tenement there. The circle there I've outlined there, this represents where we've been drilling this year so far. So we've only been drilling on about a 5-kilometre strike length, total 20 kilometres. So far this year, we've drilled 53 RC holes and 11. We've been drilling for near on 6 months. We're on to our last hole now. That started yesterday or Sunday. So we'll finish that in a couple of weeks, and that'll finish off the drilling program here. And it's envisaged that, that drilling we've done so far will support an inferred mineral resource releasing in the first quarter. We've had our resource geologist on site already. He's done a site visit there. He's got most of the data, so that is well and truly in train now to get that mineral resource out. Now, on the next slide is just some of the highlights of the drilling here. As I suggested at the start there, we're a project with scale. If you look at those intersections there, these are some of the best ones you'll find around the world for graphite at the moment. That top one there, 206 metres at 10%. You can see the core on the right there and the grades there. It's nice, consistent graphitic schist way down that hole, and it's a real rip snorter of a deposit, we think, which is the scale and the width and the relatively simple geology. And there's a whole series of really wide intersections there. The true width of this sediment is probably between 100 to 150 metres true width. So it's pretty hard to get a hole right down that, drilling at minus 60 degrees. So the intersections do vary, but you can see there that the grey is generally consistent, and we've got those nice wide intersections as well. I think more importantly as well, as far as use flow goes, we've got 13 RC holes and 5 core holes still in the lab being assayed, and we expect those results to come through in the next, say, 4 to 6 weeks. So we hope by early December to mid-December we'll have all of the results announced to the market. And once we have all those results, that will enable the resource geologist to get stuck into the mineral resource estimation procedures as well. On the next slide there is a diagram there just summarising the drilling to date, where we've been drilling. That's all 53 RC holes and 11 there with some of those highlights. Well, you can see we get some fairly wide holes right along that 5-kilometre strike length there from the east on the right-hand side of the picture, way up to the northwest on the left-hand side there. There are a couple of gaps there where there are dams there for the stock. This is an active cattle station, and there are cattle on there right now. And obviously, being the dry season where there's no rain, they rely on those dams. So we did negotiate with the pastoralists and agreed not to drill around those dams when they're needed. Many gaps there that we do need to drill, we'll try and pick them up early next dry season when there's still a lot of water around the paddocks, so infill there, which won't take too long. So that drilling pattern there will give us an inferred resource. Next year, we'll probably come back and do infill drilling around there, infill to maybe 100-metre spacing, maybe in some areas to add it, maybe at measured resources, but we'll discuss that with the resource geologist and see how we are going forward. I guess the highlight to take there is that it's consistent, it's wide, and it's good grade. You can see there's a couple of sections there too, section 1 and section. We'll have a look at those as well. On the next slide is section 1, and that's those 2 high-grade hits that I showed you before, holes 4 and hole 5 there. Excuse me. Again, you can see the relatively consistent nature of the schist there. It's fairly simple geology, outcrops on surface. I think we are finding now with some of the drilling that on that footwall surface, which is the contact there on the left-hand side of the schist, the grade might be a little bit lower, and as you drill through it towards the other side, through the the hanging walls on the right-hand side, if you on the left-hand side, tend to get higher grades and towards the footwall side of it. It seems relatively consistent there. You get nice runs of high grade 10 plus within a background of sort of 7 to 8% as well. So it's a nice regular, simple geology, which makes this drilling program a lot easier to plan. On the next slide, on section 2, and this is an important one. This is a drill hole that was drilled by previous owners about 6 or 7 years ago. We used that to estimate our exploration target. They just took little samples down the hole and assayed a 10-metre slab of core for carbon, and also for graphite, and also for in-section work. We've actually managed to find this complete hole in a shed in Pine Creek, which is good. So we've got that now, and it's being cut as we speak on site of Pine Creek. So we'll get an assay from that as well, which is good, because it not only saves us the cost of drilling that hole, but it provides us with more information right towards the eastern side of one of those dams. So that was a good find. It's amazing what you find in Pine Creek. Some look hard at that. So on the next slide is our work program going forward. Like I suggested, the work to date, we've drilled those holes, we've got good results, and we've defined the graphite schist as per the exploration target earlier in the year. So we've ticked that box there at the top. We're drilling up to get the tonnage to grade potential. That's all there. We've also submitted our initial sample metallurgical test work. We submitted 100 kilograms of rock IMO lab. Excuse me. They started that work a few weeks ago. So again, we're hoping to get that back by the March quarter next year. And that'll give us the initial work on flotation recovery and characteristics of the graphite concentrate as well, which is important. That determines how we go forward with further test work. We've collected a fleet of samples from the diamond drill core for thin section analysis. That gives us an idea of the mineralogy and also flake size as well. That work is progressing, and we've released some of that previously, and that shows that we have got flakes up to 160 microns. It's generally in that sort of 75 to 120 micron size, which is good for battery anode material, for the processing of it. So we've done those 3 top points. The ones which are coming up in the next few months is the maiden mineral resource estimate. As I suggested, work has commenced on that. We're looking forward to that, and that'll come out in the March quarter. And on the basis of that, we will do some more infill drilling next year, infill the resource current to get indicated resources, which obviously enables us to do more advanced studies down the track. And also that drilling will provide additional for advancement. Once we get the first batch of metallurgy back with the concentrate grades and things like that, we'll have to get more concentrate out of the test work and assess that for suitability for downstream processing battery anode material. So that's our sort of next 6 months workflow there. Wet season up there finishes in about March or April, so we'll start drilling around. I think the drilling will take us maybe 2 or 3 months, and at the same time we'll be advancing the more advanced metallurgical tests. But that's just a snapshot of what we're doing going. Now, the next couple of slides are just a bit of a look at the graphite market. As I suggested at the start of the presentation, the market is forecast to be in deficit from about now onwards as EV use increases. These graphs there from Benchmark Mineral Intelligence show that now is sort of the point, the inflection point is around now where the demand will increase. The battery anode material market take over as the main use for the graphite. And on the next slide there, it's just some of the dynamics of production. It's important to note there on that diagram on the top right-hand side there, China is the world's dominant producer of flat graphite. They produce more than 60% of the world's flat graphite. And they're also the world's, by far, like a virtual monopoly on spherical graphite, which is what is a precursor to going into your battery anode, your car batteries. So they absolutely dominate the market. 99% of spherical graphite and 93% of the anode material which goes into the battery. That means that essentially every single electric car planet, it's got graphite in its battery, which is being processed in China. And given last week China introduced restrictions, or we introduced export controls on graphite, that sort of gives them a mechanism now where they can, if they want to, restrict graphite exports from the country and control them. So that's obviously put a lot of people on looking at the supply chains, battery graphite products, and we think we're very well placed at the moment, given with the project to on any sort of development timeline, which might come to fruition, that we're at the right place to take advantage of. So that interest in diversifying away from the market, which kind of dominates it. So I think it augurs well for a good few years for graphite development. And just that as an aside there, that graph on the left-hand side there from the US Department of Energy just highlights the critical nature of some of the elements here. See, graphite is in that little red square there, which is high supply risk, given it's only from one market. So the energy is a significant component car battery. It's interesting to note that nickel and lithium and cobalt get a lot of press for their battery use, and their prices, the interest for exploration companies, things like that, very well known, because graphite's a little hidden behind their it's in their shadow, so to speak. Graphite is just as an component of the car battery as well. So we think that the demand going forward, Chinese export controls, the time perhaps for graphite time, and so we're looking forward to that increase in price over the coming months and years. On the next slide there is the end of the presentation. See that our website's there. If you want any more information, you could look at that. And I suppose with that, I can pass over to you, David, and any questions.
Thanks, Richard. Great presentation. A stack of questions, so we'll fire through them. I'll try and collate them into little groups if possible to make it easier for you to not jump around too much. Firstly, how did you come across these assets? I'm always amazed when I look at companies that have acquired a project, and it's in their words, developing into a tier one project, clearly in a tier one jurisdiction and a great part of the world to operate. How do you get your hands on projects like this?
Well, two of the directors, Bruno Sinek and Nick Ravel, they vended this project in from one of their other companies. But I think the story it's a bit like some of the lithium stories as well. Lithium was and sort of unwanted or unknown commodity years ago. You look at some of the lithium projects in Western Australia, which were it wasn't a commodity people were looking for. And I think graphite's the same. This project historically was explored for copper and then uranium as well. And that graphitic schist was always known, had outcrops. Everyone knew it was there. But now there's that demand for graphite, the market's right. And I think Nick and Bruno were there at the right time and recognised that, picked up the grant. It was vacant ground, they picked it up, and now it's found its way into Kingsland, and we think it'll grow into a size deposit.
And in terms of the impact or significance of the recent Chinese export controls on graphite, what impact does that have on firstly Kingsland and the development of your project, but the wider graphite market?
Well, I think it gives impetus to the development of sources of graphite outside of China. It's a critical mineral on most countries' lists now. Graphite, the European Union, Japan, Korea, Australia, and North America. But again, like I said before, it's been a bit of a poor cousin to the likes of lithium and nickel and cobalt, which are recognised as strategic minerals, and graphite is as well. And I think this export control announcement by China just emphasises that point, that this is, graphite is concentrated more than anything else, I think, in one market. Like that graph suggests, that 99% of anode material or spherical graphite comes out of China. So there's any supply disruption at all, it'll have a significant impact on the ability of car manufacturers, for example, to source material for batteries for their cars. So it's a very important factor that to recognise the supply issues with graphite.
And just touching on spheronising, what options would Kingsland look at in terms of spheronising its product down the track?
Oh, look, it's early days for that. We've got to get a resource first. We've got to get a graphite concentrate first. Obviously, that's the first step, to get a concentrate, which is a usable concentrate for any further downstream processing. And we're confident we'll get that, but we'll find that out in the next, say, 6 to 8 months, whatever it's going to take. Obviously, the Australian government, state and territory governments are very keen on their critical minerals and strategic minerals programs that they've been announcing and funding. to have these sort of downstream processing facilities in Australia. So, ideally that'd be the end game, is to produce flake graphite from a mine. If a mine actually does get going up at Leyland, and to produce final anode material from a processing facility, in the Northern Territory. That'd be the end game for us.
And just on that, there's a question here directly related to the critical minerals facility that the federal government that he's putting in place, increasing the size of that facility from $2 to $4 billion. And there's obviously a lot that the Northern Territory government are doing to support industry and the growth of critical minerals in their jurisdictions. When and how do you start tapping into those opportunities?
Look, I think, yes, and we've discussed that at the board level. Once we get a resource, and once we get the metallurgical test work, which proves that there is a viable project there, that's when we'll start talking to governments to progress the project. So that'll be, let's go into early to mid next year. We'll start looking at that. Once we get a resource, we're in a position to apply for a mining lease if you want to. And obviously, once you apply for a mining lease, that's when we'll start talking to any of those providers, government providers of any potential help, financial help.
We're certainly seeing in the lithium sector M&A occurring a lot further down the chain than ever before, and explorers and even pre-resource explorers are being viewed as an opportunity for investment firstly, but also other opportunities. Again, when do you start seeing those conversations happening in regards to your projects, and how closely do you think people are watching what you're up to, given the potential size of the project that you've got?
Look, we've had some very preliminary discussions, very informal with people regards things like that. But I think I think the real key for us and the milestone will be a mineral resource and metallurgical test work. And once we get that, I think we'll find that people who want graphite supplies from external markets, from other markets from China, might start looking at our project a bit seriously, where we can actually show them something. We've got some meat on the bone, so to speak. And when we've got that, I think expect to get a bit of interest, and obviously we can achieve that as well. So just what we can do with the project and the price from it.
Look, it may be a bit early to answer this question, but flake size when it comes to graphite is clearly important. And you did mention that yours is of a good size. How relative is it from a sizing point of view? Does it stack up against peers?
Oh, look, traditionally graphite was used for industrial uses, where coarse flake was the prime product, and it still commands the highest premium because it is the I guess the more scarce graphite product, jumbo flakes, above say 300 microns or whatever, and that's still the case. That still demands a premium price. But for the battery anode material, the process produces little spheres of graphite that are maybe 10 to 20 microns across. So you don't need jumbo flat graphite to make that. What you need there is really the metallurgical characteristics and the purity to go right down to that spherical graphite. So the flake size isn't quite as you can always break up coarse flake to make finer flake to make better. So what we've got is the flake size, around that sort of, like I said, 75 to 150 microns or thereabouts. That's a good size flake to be making to batteries. And given that years to come, the main use for graphite will be for spherical graphite battery use, we think we've got potentially a good product there.
Now, I just want to sort of switch it up a little bit. You did sneak into your presentation a reference to gallium, which hasn't gone unnoticed by those watching. There's a number of questions in relation to gallium. The first is, how significant are the gallium credits in the project? The second, which may be a harder one to answer, what is it used for? And how does that market develop? And the third question I had through was, what evaluation work do you do? Because potentially it looks like there's a large resource of gallium there.
That's right. Look, it's early days for the gallium. We noticed when we were doing a lot of the multi-element assaying for the drill samples that there was, around 15 to 25 ppm of gallium in nearly every single hole, and it was quite extensive. And you go back about 3 or 4 months ago, China introduced controls for gallium and germanium. So we thought, okay, well, that sort of ties in with the graphite as well. Now, it's not the prime target, obviously. Graphite's the prime target there. And we don't know much at this stage about the mineralogy or the metallurgy of the gallium. But obviously, if we can produce a concentrate of higher grade gallium, which could be potentially extracted, again, it provides a source of material for gallium outside of traditional supplier, which is China. And gallium is important in high-end electronics. I think there's gallium in mobile phones and chips and things like that. So it's important to note that that the export controls on gallium and germanium are similar to ones recently introduced for graphite, and they're all very important minerals for batteries and high-end electronics. So we're doing test work now, which is aimed at the flotation recoveries graphite, but at the same time we'll be assaying streams through that test work for gallium and germanium as well, just to check what's in there, and going down the track, try and get the lab to look at what they can do with concentrating that gallium and seeing if there's an economic extraction route we can take.
Final couple of questions. Funding. How's the funds look and how far does it get you?
Oh, look, we've got $3.7 million in the bank now as of the end of the quarter. That's well and truly enough for us to finish the drilling program going forward to get indicated resources. But, it'll cover all of that test work we're doing now. So, look, it's, you can do your numbers on how much drilling you can do with that much money and things like that. But, we've got enough funding right now to get this forward to that milestone, which was the resource and metallurgical test work earlier next year. And we're confident we'll have success with both of those important factors, and we'll see what happens after that.
Well-funded, quality team, quality asset, tier 1 jurisdiction, and a pile of news flow to come. A clear focus on that resource, maiden resource, early mid next year. So certainly a company to watch. Richard, thanks for your time.
No worries, David. Great to talk to you. See you later.
Thanks, Richard. As I said in my introduction, the purpose of this webinar series is to give you the opportunity to engage directly with companies that are on your watch list, or to give you ideas of companies to drop onto the watch list so you can follow them. So look at your watch list. Let us know if there are any companies on there you want to hear from, or let us know about companies you've been thinking about adding to your watch list, and we'll get them to present to you in the future. Thank you, Richard, for making the time to present today, and you for watching. We'll see you all again in a few weeks' time.